Before I was reading articles where it was like Olympic gold medalist Justin Gatlin. Now it was like 2-time doper Justin Gatlin. It was not even acknowledged any of the accolades I've ever achieved in my life or my career. It was just like, you are this poster child of doping now. And I was the elephant in the room because I started competing again and started running fast again and started beating people again. People didn't know what to do with me.
Who owns the most unique story in sports? Maybe it's Kurt Warner.
5 years ago, you were stocking supermarket shelves in Iowa.
And we're world champions. How about the Rams?
Or Serena.
The great Serena Williams.
Maybe it's Jeremy Lin, who set the world ablaze in 2012.
Lin for three. Bang!
But for track and field, that title might be reserved for Justin Gatlin.
On the outside, here comes Justin Gatlin.
One of the fastest men in the world may never race again.
A few months back, when I was building the age-adjusted world records for track and field, one man was flattening the curve in the 100-meter, and that was Justin Gatlin. Gatlin didn't just do well in his 30s, he peaked. And yet, with the world watching this incredible feat, something that we had never seen a man do, he was ridiculed, he was booed, he was deemed a villain.
Crowd drops.
To understand why, you need to understand his story. His arc is fascinating, and I don't think there's anything that compares in sports. Gold medalist, lifetime ban, the NFL, the fastest man in the world. And now, my conversation with Justin Gatlin. You're 22 years old. You are the fastest human on the planet. You win gold in Athens. What is going through your mind at this point?
Surreal. I think the same feeling you have when you lose a big race where you think you should win or do well. It's like a surreal moment, like, wow, you're beside yourself. So I feel like I was definitely beside myself. I knew that I trained for this moment, but this is that moment where it's bigger than everything. You know, it's like winning the Super Bowl in your rookie year and you catching the winning touchdown to win the Super Bowl for the whole game. That's what it felt like for me. It was so clutch, and I did it so early in my career. Technically, that was like my sophomore year of my career. You know, I came out in 2003, but and I didn't make the world championship team in 2003. So in 2004 was my first real big championship as a professional athlete. And it being the Olympics, and I won, it almost got to a point where it was like, all right, well, what do I do now? Because so many people, they go their whole career trying to obtain this, trying to win a gold medal in the Olympics. And that's the peak of your career. And I did it all within a year and a half of being pro. So
That's so wild.
It was.
And you're kind of a kid still.
Yeah, man. I definitely. We didn't even get a chance to really party and have a good time because we had so much going on. It was like one of those things. I remember having my medal, even getting off the award stand and still have to do the 200 and 4x1 later on. And I remember looking at my medal and then wrapping the ribbon around it and then putting it into like my side pocket of my carry-on bag and just kept going on. Just kept working and competing, man. So the moment, I think the gift and curse of that moment was you did it. I accomplished it, but I wasn't able to be present in that moment. I wasn't able to live in that moment because I still have work to do.
You know, I sense a little bit as you mentioned that. Do you wish that you had a moment, or was that maybe a good thing that you had to move on so quickly? Because I mean, like 7 billion people, you're the one person that can say, no, like nobody's faster than I am, right? There's that saying, somebody's always faster than you. You're kind of the one guy in that moment that can just be like, yeah, that's not actually the case. I think that's hilarious, by the way.
Old Justin, yes. I think that it was good that I didn't live in that moment, right? But I think for younger Justin, I needed to keep on moving forward. If I feel like I took a break and I really kind of like sat down and thought about it, I think I would have felt very full. You know what I mean? And I may not have been as sharp as necessary going into the 200 or the 4x1. So for me, I felt like moving forward was the best movement for me as as an older athlete and now retired athlete, I wish that I had that moment. I wish that I can go in and really kind of sit down and reflect on my journey up to that point and then what's going to come for me afterwards. I think that I've celebrated for so many years the statistic or the stat itself, like everyone else kind of celebrated the stat itself.
Yeah. And then, from there, so you win gold in Athens. It sounds like maybe it was just like another plate in the dishwasher. You put it in the side of your duffel bag and move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm sure that was a weird moment. But you go on to do something in the following year that, again, sets you apart. You weren't just the fastest human at the Olympics. You break the world record the following year. Is it 2005 that you break the world record?
2006. So in 2005, I win double gold. So at the World Championships in Helsinki, I go and win the 100 meters and I back it up and win the 200 as well. And then 2006, I break the world record. So 3 years in a row, just like bam, 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 bam. I became the Olympic gold medalist, double gold world champion to back it up to show I'm not a fluke, and then break the world record the next year. Like career was done basically, right?
But it wasn't. And, I have to ask you about this. The following year ended up being a little bit different, huh?
Man, I test positive. For a performance-enhancing drug that was banned, and it just devastated me, man. Rocked my career, rocked me emotionally and mentally. And now I'm sitting on the sidelines fighting for my life, and everything just happened in the blink of an eye, like losing sponsorships, friends. Like within the year of 2006 to 2008, it just was like my whole world was upside down in so many different ways. I remember moving from Raleigh, North Carolina, moving back home with my parents. It just was life-changing. Just how life-changing winning the Olympic gold was for me, it was life-changing how I got my suspension. And being sat down for 4 years was, at that point in time, was unheard of, because our normal sanction time was like 2 years, which is still like crazy when you think about professional sports. And now I'm looking at, first I was looking at life, and then I was looking at 8 years, and then it got cut down to 4, which is still, crazy within itself, almost half a decade. So for me to deal with that, it was devastating for me. I felt definitely into a deep depression. But the weird thing is, I guess that's how life is. Like, it's a gift and a curse. It always has some kind of silver lining, even with bad times.
Yeah. How did they decide the 4-year ban? Where did they get that number from?
Well, you have to kind of go back to my college campaign. So my freshman year in college, I tested positive for minute traces of amphetamines, which was in my Adderall that I've taken.
So just for like ADD?
Yeah. I was diagnosed in
banned.
second grade. Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was diagnosed in second grade. And so I have document, proof, doctor's notes, everything leading all the way up to that. Through college, you're a student athlete, right? So once you sign on to do professional sanctioned races, you're no longer a student athlete. So I think that the Adderall fell within the student athlete protocol and not necessarily in the professional realm. Me being 18, 19 at that point in time, my college coach signed off on my paperwork when I was getting ready to join the junior team for a world championship campaign. And he didn't put on the list that I was taking Adderall. I forgot. And then, so once I got tested, it showed up on my test. Mm-hmm. And then now I was facing an automatic 2-year ban, which was dealt to me. And which didn't matter because I was still in college. So I didn't even really serve a ban because I was still running college meets. I went on the next year to win the 100 and 200 again in my sophomore year, which I did in my freshman year. And
at NCAAs.
At NCAAs. And then when that happened, I got a letter in the mail, which was by the anti-doping agency, which they just lifted my whole ban out of nowhere. I didn't ask, I didn't request, I didn't fight for it. They just said, hey, you're free to go, basically. So once I turned pro, you know what I mean, in 2003, like it was easy for me to be able to kind of transition into the professional world without any kind of hiccups. And then going into 2003, sign a big contract, one of the biggest ever in that point in time. And then winning the indoor world championships in the 60 meters in 2003, getting injured for the outdoor. And then going into 2004, as we talked about, and winning there, and winning in 05 and 06. So leading back up to where we finished, because I already served a previous ban, 2 bans in our sport is a lifetime ban. So that's why I was facing a lifetime ban. And then it was negotiated to 8 years. And then once I got in front of the council of that cast, they negotiated and split the baby of 8 and gave 4. And that's how I was dealt 4 years, which was unheard of at that point in time.
So it started as 8.
It started as life.
Oh,
automatically.
I mean,
And
8
then,
sounds like life for a sprinter too.
Oh, it is. It's 100%. I think anybody in any sport, 8 years away from your sport you're a different athlete when you come back, period. You know?
Yeah.
Even if you probably didn't even think about sports anymore, but I definitely was dealt, I think, a heavy penalty. And it was a lot of things that were kind of left on the table where I thought was common sense, and a lot of things that I found to be biased against me in that situation. But I took my L, you know what I mean? I've always stood by what I've said about being innocent, unknowing in our situation. And I broke it down to everybody. You know, if you go into a massage parlor, right? You go to get a massage. First thing you're going to do is they're going to say, hey, undress, lay on the table, you know, face down. And then you proceed they come in the room and give you a massage, right? At that point in time, you're not even knowing what kind of lotions or anything they're putting on you. So that's what I had. I had a disgruntled therapist I was working with at that point in time. And not knowing, I fired him at the end of last season. And then I couldn't find anybody who can do the great work that he did. He did a lot of different things, stretching, massage, acupuncture, all these kind of things. So it was like a guy who was made up all of 3 guys all in one. And I was on a time crunch. So me and him talked it out, worked it out. And I feel like at that point in time, once we got rolling in that season, everything was okay. And getting to Kansas City Relays, which was its inaugural first relays, which was small meet, not meaning anything, and just doing it as a favor of the meet promoter because I was cool with him. And the weirdest thing ever is like, once I finished my run, which all I did was like a relay, so I anchored, he proceeds to like wanting to massage me while I'm doing my press conference, but with gloves on, which was weird. But at the point in time, I'm naive. I'm young. I'm like 20 years old, 22, 23 years old. And I'm just not even thinking about someone within my own circle is going to do harm to me, because if I do good, you do good. You know what I mean? So that's where I was sitting at. And everything just came crumbling down when I tested positive. I was like, wow.
So your first positive test was for something you were prescribed in childhood. This is just, I have to pause here. This is where it gets confusing as a fan, because I'm sure it's confusing as an athlete. You have people that just say, okay, well, they're all juicing. And I think that's a shortcut that they make because there's a crisis of fairness in a lot of these sports, at least in track and field, where, okay, Richardson, she had marijuana in her system. She's suspended. It seems weird that she can't compete in the Olympics because she had marijuana. I'm not sure if that's a performance enhancer, a significant one. And then you have other people that maybe are taking more significant performance enhancing drugs. And so as a fan, you don't have enough time in your day to sort through all that. So I think a lot of people just level set and they say, okay, well, they're all juicing. But obviously not everybody's doing the exact same thing. But I think that's where a lot of people just end up saying about sprinting, well, yeah, they're all just juicing.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I usually call those fans headline readers. They usually just read the headlines and not really kind of focus on the detail of the body of the article, and then also ask questions like, well, why did this happen? Why did that happen? There were things that I said before that were common sense that were kind of pushed to the side, like through discovery. as you know how court goes, and you're in a court case, you get to learn about the other side's material as well. And through discovery, we found out that there were athletes who tested positive for Adderall as well on a professional level and didn't have a subscription for it. You know what I mean? They didn't have that. So that should have been
didn't count
automatic
against
ban.
them?
No, they got a warning.
So that's what I'm talking about. It's like, what are we supposed to, that's where, as a public, because we don't have time for all those details. It's like,
Exactly.
you're maybe the headline reader, but it's like, we're living our lives. And so when we hear, okay, this person tested positive for a banned substance, immediately says, well, he was juicing, he took steroids. And we just group them in when clearly there are people that are doing more egregious things than others, and not every drug is the same, obviously.
Yeah.
But it makes for a really weird experience as a fan too. And I can't imagine how strange that must have been as an athlete. And I'm sure you were sitting there like, wait, hold on, I'm banned for life here? Like for a cream that this guy rubbed into me. And again, like, I don't know, like, even all the details of that, but I'm sure just processing that as a athlete had to be so strange. But it's weird for both worlds.
It is. It's definitely weird. And understanding and seeing both sides and being open to see both sides. I get it. You want to enjoy, a sport, like you said. So you kind of just sweep everything into the same pile and be like, oh, they have to be. And you find a lot of people who have a voice to speak out. They say just, if you're running that fast, it doesn't matter. Everyone's doing it. It's the everyone's doing it quote for me that kills me, because once you really dive into, that whole world of banned athletes, every athlete who's been banned has a different story, and it's actually unique. You find out it's the only thing that separates them is the what if. What if I could get, that massage therapist to confess? Or what if the next athlete who ate tainted beef couldn't find their receipt? They would have been looking at the fact of being banned, and now they was able to get off. But I think when you look at individuals or companies that have that ultimate power over certain sports, they can control the narrative because that's what they need to do. They're a third party to the government of whatever that sport is or that federation. And when you're like that, you have to show that you are doing your job to the utmost to be able to keep your position. So you have to go out and catch big fish. You have to go out and create stories. You have to not be as lenient, and you got to show the world that you're tough because you're against that. I just wish that my story and so many other stories I've heard of had an opportunity to be put out into the public so it can be talked about more or discussed more, or even looked at as an individual case instead of just thrown in a pile with others.
So they reduce it down to 4. And I mean, I think this is where, because of the rest of your career, your stories maybe had a little bit more legs than others. And people may or may not have heard all the details, but wasn't there something with your case too, to where you couldn't talk about it?
Yeah. So what happens is once you test positive and you're in that kind of system, you get an email from that governing body, anti-doping agency. They send you basically an email of a list of lawyers that kind of practice this law. And you're like, okay, well, I'm gonna pick from these lawyers because they're gonna be more well-versed than if I bring in a lawyer from the outside who has to learn the laws, and then that'll cost you money and hours. And then hopefully they'll be able to win this case, But come to find out, once again, those lawyers are in bed with the anti-doping agency. The agency at the end of the year takes them on retreats or do whatever. So it doesn't. This is true.
They're going to President's Club in Maui if they get a good athlete.
Exactly. So it's almost to the fact of like, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't, in a way. Then I came across a lawyer who actually lives in my hometown in Pensacola, Joe Zarzer, and he was a bulldog lawyer, the definition of a bulldog lawyer. And he looked at my case outside of the box. He was like, okay, cool. But this is what you're facing. This is what the test shows. Even through certain aspects of those tests, they broke their own protocol, like the bag that all the test goes in, and it goes into a travel bag. So you have like 100 samples in a travel bag. The rules are, if that sample bag is opened in transit, you got to throw all these all these tests out. So we went through and found out that the bag was open in transit. All those tests should have been just thrown out, discarded. And they broke their own rules to be able to bend it for themselves. So my lawyer was able to find those things out. And then on top of that, he said, let's work on your disability. Let's go back and fight your first situation where you should have got a warning. Where in Discovery, we found out people were taking Adderall who shouldn't have been taking Adderall or were taking cocaine and got a warning as well. Let's fight that. He said, you are covered under the American Disability Act for having ADD. So he said, we're going to fight that in federal court. So
and it's not like you were just trying to pass a few exams in college late at night. You know, this was like something from the second grade.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I remember when my teacher was like, I think Justin needs to be tested. We were taking a test in class, and I remember a bird flew by the window and it started chirping. All the kids were looking at the bird, and then they kind of just went back to work. But I'm sitting there looking. Where did this bird come from? What kind of bird is it? Does it have a nest? Does it have babies? These are all the things I'm thinking about. So I'm totally distracted. And she noticed that, and she said,
"Could I beat the bird in a race?"
Exactly, right? So going through that, I was tested at that young age. And then, you know, in my era, I was the guinea pig. So it would start off with Ritalin, then it went to Zoloft, then it went to Adderall, that kind of stuff like that. And once I found out I tested positive the first time, I just pretty much denounced taking any kind of medication that was going to help me stay focused on my education. I just sacrificed that, you know, and put it on the back burner so I can be able to compete. And that's what I did. But that's what he attacked. So we went with the American Disabilities Act, and then we took it to federal court, and, you know, we damn near won because they had to pay me, which was unheard of in that situation, because whenever you heard an anti-doping agency ever have to pay somebody, you know? So they paid me a large sum of money, but their terms was it has to be a gag order in place. He can't talk about this until he retires. So the moment I retired, I was able to talk about it.
What reasons do you think the gag order was in place?
It was going to open up Pandora's box. Because if I talked about all the things that I found out through my case and how I got paid, the next person is going to reopen their case, you know, and the next person after that's going to reopen their case. So now they're fighting these past cases where they probably didn't do their due diligence enough. And now they're in court, you know, where they should be going out testing people. So they didn't want to be in that situation, I feel.
And that wasn't long after Balco and everything else, right?
Yeah, the sucky thing is it all happened around that same time. Even though I was not a part of the Balco situation in any situation at all.
Right.
It was just the fact of it was already hot in the news. So
they had to clean everything up.
They had to clean everything up, exactly. And then you're saying, oh, Olympic gold medalist? Oh yeah, we're going to get him. Big fish.
Yeah, because I mean, you're the poster child of the Olympics. It is the 100 meter that is the pinnacle, in my opinion, every single Olympics. This moment where everybody pauses what they're doing, maybe over 1 billion people watch. I'm not sure how many watch. I can feel the static in my living room off of the TV, just watching it by myself. I can only imagine the electricity in that moment. But it is this event that just, you can't look away from. There's something poetic and dramatic about a foot race that is just naturally that way. I mean, as a kid, you race against your buddy and you just feel that adrenaline and it just pulls you in. And so it's not good for business if that poster child is, you know, getting tagged with something. So, you know, they say, hey, we need to clean this up because this is bad for business.
Yeah, I totally see that. And I get that stance. And I believe if they did things the right way and kind of did a little more deep dive, it would have grabbed the attention in the wrong way for them, I feel,
right.
You know, but overall it was an amazing learning experience for me in my life. You know, at times I think, and anybody would say, man, I wish I can erase this from my past or things that you regret. And I used to say, yeah, I regret that, or I regret being in that situation, period, or trusting people. But it wouldn't make me who I am today. it wouldn't give me the wisdom that I have and to see my sport and other sports in a different perspective too.
That makes sense. So the ban got reduced down to 4 years, which is good news. But I have to imagine that was still tough. Such a fall from grace. I mean, you were the world champion, the fastest man to ever walk this planet. And then suddenly you can't compete anymore. You can't do what you love and what you're great at anymore. That had to have been so challenging. I mean, it had to have been just a hell of an experience.
Oh, it twisted my whole persona. Everything I worked for, it just put everything in reverse. So before I was reading articles where it was like Olympic gold medalist Justin Gatlin. Now it was like 2-time doper Justin Gatlin. It was not even acknowledged any of the accolades I've ever achieved in my life or my career. It was just like, you are this poster child of doping now. And I became the elephant in the room because no one who's ever really tested positive in our sport and served 2 years or even a year and came back and did better than when they were popped, before they were popped. I was the elephant in the room because I started competing again and started running fast again and started beating people again. People didn't know what to do with me. They didn't know what to cheer for me. They didn't know to boo me. They didn't know what to do with me. And I became this kind of low-key pariah in a way. It was like, oh man, this guy. I became the controversial guy for sure. But I think the proof is in the pudding. You know, like you have these people who do test positive and then once they come back out, they're a shell of themselves. And I think for me, I can say I'm innocent 1,000 times every day for the rest of my life. And that doesn't mean that everyone's going to believe me. I felt like physically I needed to be back out there and go through that same protocol, getting tested all the time after all my races, but still going out there and dominating and winning like I once did before. And that's exactly what I did. You know, so I felt the people who could see that would acknowledge that and be like, this man came back after 4 years. He gave everyone a head start. He gave everyone opportunity to be able to go out there and become champions and break world records. And he still came back and was fighting and jockeying for position to be the top dog.
What did you do during that 4-year period, though, when you were off?
I felt like I was on a journey. Like, remember that show, Kung Fu Legends Continue, where he's like walking the path? I felt like I was just walking this path of life, man. You got to realize I was like 24 years old. So I didn't know much about life. And clearly me being successful through college in track and field and then making such a big splash on the professional realm, I was very sheltered. I didn't know hardship as an adult period, or even as an athlete. So I found myself trying to go into modeling at one point, just listen to everyone's opinion, you know what I mean? Just because I was lost. So when someone says, hey, you should try modeling. Okay, I'll try modeling. Hey, you should try football. Okay, I'll try football. So I was just doing a whole bunch of different things. And I did try football and had a short stint there. And
in the NFL, right?
Yeah. So I went and tried out for a couple of, had some private practices with some teams. I went to the Titans. I went to the Saints, went to the Cardinals, and I ended up in mini camp with the Buccaneers. So it was a journey. It taught me.
Did you play for Gruden then?
I did, yeah.
What was that? Had to be that. What was that like?
I'll just say Gruden is definitely one of one, man. He just had, my nickname was Gold Medal. So we're sitting there watching, like highlights of practice and how we're moving and our routes and everything. And at that point in time, I didn't understand the nuances of timing from the quarterback taking drop step 7, 5, 3, or whatever like that. And you have to be able to be on that same rhythm as the quarterback to get to your position of catching the ball. I just was going balls to the wall. Like as soon as he said hike, looked like I was running 100 meters because no
straight
one
go rats, all verts,
all that. And I was so off on timing. By the time he said go, I literally was out of the screen, not even in the position to catch the ball. I was out of the screen. So he was like, Gold Medal, what you doing, man? So that's when I realized like it was a cadence to it, you know? So I enjoyed it. But I laid in bed one night when we was in minicamp and one of my roommates, he was asleep already. Like, and I was up to like 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning, right? And going over these plays. And I just remember laying there like, man, this is such a struggle for me. Like, even if I get this right, people are still going to look at me as just a track athlete who thinks he can play football. So I'm always going to be behind the 8 ball. I was like, if I'm going to be behind the 8 ball, I at least want to be behind the 8 ball in a kingdom that I once ruled. So that's what I decided to go back into track and field.
Did you get a chance to run a 40 though?
I did with the Titans. You remember when Pac-Man Jones left the Titans? So yeah, they brought me up there to do the 40, but then also work on some catches, returns. And I went out there and ran, first one I ran like a 4.20. And it was like, no.
So already the fastest.
Already the fastest. No, this can't be. So then I ran again. I ran 4.19. And the dude smacked himself in the face while he's holding the clock. Like, this can't be real. Like that. So they was just like, all right, cool. So they went off and just like, all right, just go do something else. We can't believe this is real. But it seemed like almost every place I went to, they wanted me to kind of run a 40. It was like almost like a circus.
It was a parade of sorts.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it was maybe the wrong reason. Like, hey, we just want to, like, it's almost a fun thing for the front office just to get you to see how fast you could go in a 40.
Exactly. Yeah.
Do you think you could run faster than 4.19?
Yeah. I mean, I think people don't realize that, and you got to take certain things away. When you take rubber away and starting blocks, but in those situations, 100-meter athlete who's elite, they're coming through the 40 yards in like 3.9, 3.8 sometimes. So we're going through that easy, but obviously putting cleats on and going on grass, 3-point stance, that'll change the dynamic of it. But you've seen a couple of athletes this past year and a couple of years back where they went out there with the timing beams on turf and they can run 4.1, as track athletes. So
that kid from Iowa, I think it was,
the kid
right?
from Iowa. Yep. He went out there and did that. Christian Coleman a couple of years back did that. So yeah, it's definitely possible. You know what? In reality, I think that if I trained for a couple of months and just worked on strength and speed, I think that I can still go out there and break the NFL record at the age I am now.
How old are you?
I'm 43.
Dude, you have some insane longevity. We'll get to this more, but you think you could run a faster time in the 40? You think you could break 4?
I think so. Yeah. I think the worst I could do is be on par with the best 40-yard runners in the NFL right now. Guys who are in their early 20s, who are fast, strong, athletic. I know that I can, in that situation of a 40, I think I can hang with them for sure.
What do you think the difference is between like football fast and track fast?
Angles, power output, the science of it, what you specialize in, you know what I mean? Learning those kind of things I think it's just trajectory. Like, they usually go to people who learn about angles and speed and momentum and velocity before they get ready for their pro day or their combine. They don't go to like a football coach. They go to somebody who specializes in speed. I've had guys come to me to specialize in speed because we know what it takes to run that fast. Yeah, these football guys can lift the gym. They can squat 400 plus. They can bench press 225 20 times. They're strong enough to do it. It's that no one has ever taught them to use the right angles. Yeah, and it will feel weird for them.
Do you think there's a benefit to that? I mean, because you wonder, like with football, you have to maybe be a little bit lower to the ground because you're going to get lit up and just decleated if you're running more upright. So I mean, like, what would be the benefit of a football guy training a little bit more from a track mindset, maybe in the off season to do a little cross training?
It would be totally beneficial for them. I mean, you see the guys, the proof is in the pudding right now. I mean, you got Tyreek Hill out there. You got Xavier Worthy, like people who have some kind of experience in the track and field world through their youth, and they kind of hold on to that. Tyreek still does workouts. You know what I mean? McCaffrey still does workouts. After he's finished his football practice, he does track workouts, and it helps them. That speed that you understand, and when you tell your body to hit certain angles, it just changes the game for you on the field. Like understanding turnover, understanding foot placement, understanding how to protect your hamstrings and use more of your quad, that triple extension of calf, quad, and your glute to kind of run and push off of. They're used to having low center of gravity and kind of just having everything behind them when they're running. And it's just switching and strengthening up the hip flexors, and then also working on that core and those shoulders.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's a different, and maybe it's a way of, like for a football player or just a different athlete, it's a way of almost cross-training and, figuring out, okay, when do I flip that switch to maybe run slightly different? But there's also the acceleration that you guys have that can be taught and learned more of. And one of the things I've been doing sprinting lately, just sprinting workouts, and I got to go down to the University of Oregon and do a workout with one of their coaches that I just didn't even realize because I was a basketball player, is you're supposed to pause, like after you do a full all-out sprint, you're supposed to maybe take like a few minute break. Like he told me 3-4 minutes for the workout we were doing. It was weird because I didn't feel tired. And so I felt like I needed to just go right back into it. And he started kind of opening my mind of, no, you really want to take a full break here. It might feel like you're recovered. You're not actually yet. And we're training something a little bit different here than just doing conditioning. And I'm in my 30s. Like I've played a lot of sports. I played collegiately. I played overseas for a little bit. I thought I knew a lot about sports. And here I am learning something fairly novel to the track world. I ran track in high school. I didn't know that either, right? Like, I guess what is the benefit of that? Because that to me is a little bit, it was strange. Like, why am I not just running again when I feel like I'm recovered? Do you understand what I'm talking about?
Yeah. So it kind of sets on that whole basis of aerobic and anaerobic workouts. Like he said before, you may not feel tired because you just ran one, but it's the fact of you're resetting your body to understand, like to have that almost full rest. Because we have a half rest. Our half rest will be like 4 minutes. A full rest, depending on what discipline you're running or event you're running, and what kind of workout you're doing, a full rest can be from 8 to 10 minutes. Full rest.
See, that you just feel fully recovered. That's why it's so elusive, because you're like at 2 minutes, if you've run 60 meters, you're like after 2-3 minutes, you're like, yeah, I can go again.
So let's just say if you're going out there to do a speed endurance workout, right? So all of it is you're just working on your lactic threshold. You're working on just trying to get through the workout, teaching your body to operate at a certain deficit, right? And keep working at that deficit. So when you are healthy in the next couple of weeks, your body has learned I can operate at an even higher level because I'm not at that deficit I've been training at, So you're building yourself up. But if you're looking on polishing, technique, just pure speed, you have to get yourself to a point where you're running all out, and then you take a full rest and you come back and replicate that same situation over and over again, because that coach is standing there with a stopwatch and he's trying to gauge and see and get a understanding, a ratio of how fast you're running from your first rep all the way to your third rep. If you have full rest all the way through, that tells me right there that you're on pace to go out there and say run 9.7, because you pretty much peaked into the 9.7 your first one. The second one, you might have been a little tired, but now your body's used to that full rest and that workout. And that third one, you might hit that 9.7 again. So now you're in 9.7 shape. So that's what gives those coaches the ability to kind of predict what you can run once you get out there in the game of play on the big stage.
Is the rest period typically same for a lot of plyo workouts, like plyometric workouts?
Mostly. I mean, you're still gauging around 4 to 6 minutes. Yeah, rest.
Because he had me do a plyo workout, and that's where it was the same thing. It was like, we did some hurdle hops, and he's like, all right, 3-4 minutes. And I was like, I mean, I'm not super tired. I feel like I could just hop right back in and do this after a minute. He's like, no, you need, a little bit more recovery, even if you feel like you're ready. And it was just such a different way of approaching a workout than I had ever done in basketball or football.
So we do pace too. I don't know if you understand pace. So if you're running, let's just say 100-meter repeats or 60-80 or something like that runs, your coach is going to want you to come through in 10 seconds on hand time, right? You got to keep within that same pace. He'll say, guys, I need you to be between 10 seconds the fastest and then 12 seconds the slowest. So you got to work within that same bubble, right? And every rep has to be within that same bubble. And then if he can go back and chart and say, okay, towards the end of your workout, you were starting to get to the 12s. So that now he knows how to be able to gauge you that way, right? It's not just going out there just running and see what time you run. It's about kind of getting a well-rounded understanding of what kind of shape you're in, because you could be running with a group of guys and one guy is constantly in 10-second shape through that workout. And every rep he does, he's 10, 10, 10, 10, 10. And then you have another guy who could be 10 in the beginning and then drop off middle and then come back and hit 10s again. So then now he knows how to be able to gauge this guy. So it's all kind of case by case with a whole group of athletes that you're working with, and you understand and know exactly what they need and how they operate and how their body burns energy too.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a different approach. So kind of going back to it. So again, you try the NFL and then you make your track comeback. So how did that first year go back into track? How did that first year for you go once you did get back to the track?
Let's just say my name was Mud. I was blackballed. So after even serving 4 years, which was my penalty, I came back into a sport where I was blackballed for another 3 and 4 years. In actuality, I was kind of like low-key shadow banned for the rest of my career.
From where?
Meets. I was blackballed for a while, so I had to run like world challenges, which are like a lower level meet. So I'm going to like these holes in the wall in Europe somewhere where the prize money was not even covering my plane fare. You know what I mean?
How much was the prize money?
Man, you're looking at probably 400 to 500 euros.
So that's like the flight.
That's a flight, exactly. And I had to win that. That wasn't even like given to me just to show up. It wasn't appearance fee. I had none of that anymore. It was, you just another guy. So I had to go out and win 400 euros just to hopefully cover a portion of my flight. So that's not even going in my pocket. That's just me going out and spinning my wheels around the world. And then I started to be able to get into somewhat bigger meets also because I was going to nationals and beating the top dogs in America. And it was showing that I was ready to run. So I had one guy who was notorious. He was notorious of giving athletes a hard time. And he was very stingy on appearance fees. So he had this one athlete this one time who was getting ready to win the diamond for the Diamond League. And he asked for an appearance fee, rightfully so, because he was a top dog in his event. And the meet promoter was like, for what? You have to come to my meet. If you don't come to my meet, you can't win the diamond anyway. So I'm not going to pay your appearance fee, but you're going to show up anyway. That's what kind of guy he was. So he was the bottom of my list thinking that he's going to be the guy who's going to let me in. And he was the first guy to let me in. And I sweetened the pot for him. I was very grateful. I said, thank you for giving me this opportunity. And I said, to sweeten the pot, not only am I going to run the 100 for you, but I'm also going to run the 200, which is like less than an hour apart from each other. And I ran one of the fastest combination 100 meter, 200 meters in history because of that. So opened the door for me to get back into the top.
The trackonomics is wild as well. The trackonomics is so strange, like how you get paid and how it works. It kind of reminds me of just overseas basketball, and there's always these backdoor payments that are happening, and sometimes you don't get paid, sometimes you do. I'm sure a little bit more legitimate maybe at the top with Diamond League meets, but those off circuit meets of sorts, maybe a little bit more sketchy in the payment routes. But it's such a weird thing because I'd assume with Diamond League and these different events, it's like you get paid maybe if you finish in the top 3. Is that how it works?
So the Diamond League, they do a payment through first place all the way down to I think last, but the money becomes to a point where it's like maybe last place gets like $1,000. You know what I mean? Like you're not making much from it anyway. But it was the fact of me being able to get back out there and run shoulder to shoulder with the Usain Bolts, the Johan Blakes, the Tyson Gays, the Tasafa Powells, where I needed to be and where I can be able to show my competitiveness more. The first race I came back from my suspension, I ran like 10:20, 10:24, something like that. And I was drastically overweight too. And I had to be able to cut weight, get back down, and start running faster times. So it was a journey within a journey for me.
Yeah. So the payment, it varies depending on where you finish for the Diamond League. So are guys able to make a living then? Are track athletes able to make a living if they're like top 8 in their event? Or, Is it something where they're working other jobs? Are there athletes that are maybe working other jobs to make ends meet? Because like $1,000, if you're competing 10 times in a year, do the quick math on that, it's not enough money to live.
Yeah, top eight is making a living. But once again, you have so many people that's in our sport that you could make, let's just say, if you're at the top 800 meter guys, you're still going to have at least an A race, a B race, a C race, a D race of athletes who are still 100 meter caliber, but they never got a chance to get to that new level, that level of top eight. So, but it's a dog eat dog world for sure, because you can be in that top eight and get bumped out. And then next thing you know, in the next couple of years, your contract's getting cut, you're getting reduced, and you are making a living.
Yeah. How does the pay work for Olympics? I know, from what I understand, America doesn't pay their athletes super well on the Olympics. So how does it work? You're paid based on the medal that you get? So they just like cut you a check after the Olympics?
Yeah. So they just cut you a check after the Olympics. I think the pay has fluctuated. At one point in time, it was like to win a gold medal was like maybe $30,000 or something like that. This is like the gold medal that you're trying to win that's changing your life, that makes you the fastest person in the world, or maybe even history. And the money doesn't fluctuate. You're going to get 30 grand. You know what I mean? So it's hard to swallow sometimes, because our sport does everything backwards, I feel. You look at basketball or football or tennis, they hold the US Open, or they hold, the NBA Finals or the Super Bowl or whatever else, or the World Cup. They hold it at a higher regard than they would for the Olympics. The Olympics is just like, an accent piece. Like, it's like, hey, when you see Serena play at the Olympics, you're like, she's just there because it's like, I get to win a gold medal, yay, But for us, it's like, we have to get this done, because if I don't get this done, then that means that my career is a failure.
Yeah.
So it's hard. It's hard.
Yeah. The pressure in track is unique. I still maintain that the most nervous I've ever felt is the moment before a 100-meter dash. I think it's the isolation. You can't hide when you are on a track. They can't stick you out in right field. This is not a team sport. You are all alone. And I think it's that isolation that just gave me these crazy nerves. I don't know if anybody else ever had that experience, but I competed in other sports and I just didn't feel the same nerves that I would before the beginning of a race. I can't imagine coupling that with your livelihood. If you don't compete well, you're not getting any bread. You're not getting paid. That's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, I love how you put that. You are an athlete who's standing in front of a crowd of 100,000 people in person, and you feel this isolation. You do feel that. It's the craziest feeling in the world, because all eyes are on you, but you still feel isolated because you're in your own lane. You got to run your own race, but you're competing against all these other people while they're doing the same thing simultaneously. It's a weird feeling.
Yeah, is that weird having like a teammate / competitor too? Because I mean, you're maybe training with those guys that are on your relay team, and you're like, oh, these are my boys, and then you walk up to the 100 meter, you're like, okay, there's some real money on the line. You maybe look at them a little bit, hey, fuck you, man, here we go. And suddenly it just like switches and they're your competitor.
Yeah, so the guy that you're training with, usually during practice, that's who you're competing against. You're frustrated because on bad days, he's kicking your ass. And on good days, you're battling with him to beat him. But then when you get into a race and you're in the warm-up area, in the call room, and you realize that you feel so alone out there, you gravitate towards that person that you train with, that you blood, sweat, and teared every day with, you threw up on the side of the track. And a part of you says, in a weird way, man, if I'm going to get beat today, I want him to beat me, because I know how hard he worked for this moment, just like I worked for this moment. But anybody else, you kind of think like, man, I got to beat them today. I have to beat them. So you almost feel like you're with a partner in crime. You may not be on the same page, like the same person or same identity, but you know how hard each other worked. So you have some kind of understanding and respect for each other. So that's why you'll see a lot of athletes go out there and fist bump each other. They're from the same country or they're from the same training group, even though they're competing for that same gold medal.
Yeah. I mean, I love the Olympics. I love watching track, but I started to realize this. it's a showcase of survival skills. You have running, swimming, chucking a fucking spear. I mean, it is essentially the pinnacle, this showcase of survival skills. And I don't know if you ever thought about this, like your longevity, if we went back 15,000 years, would have been insane. I mean, if you were Justin 15,000 years ago, it's like, why is that guy so fed? Well, he's chasing down the literal prey. He's the only guy that can actually chase down the prey. It is Survivor. The Olympics in track, it is essentially a real version of Survivor, a more real, literal version of it. It's like, why is he so fed? Well, Tim's chucking the spear and he's slaying that woolly mammoth, but Justin gets there every time. So that's why, he's 40 years old and everybody else dies at 20 around here. I don't know.
In ancient Greece, I'd definitely be probably revered as a demigod of some sort. Yeah. Like, people like, well, he has to have God blood in him for sure.
Chasing down animals on the savannah or something like that, right? It's like, dude, who is this guy? You were maybe born in the wrong era, man. You could have lived just as long 15,000 years ago. You would have been one of the only people.
You're right. You know what? This might just be remnants of my past life that I'm living right now, just being super fit. And the thing is, like, I'm like, you know what? I wouldn't mind going out in the woods and kind of hunting and gathering a little bit.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
It might be in my blood from a past life, man. But I must admit that, you breaking it down that way, it shows the essence of sports in our Olympic sports. Like, it's all about who runs the fastest, who jumps the highest, who can swim the longest or the fastest, who can throw an object the furthest. It's almost like we take that piece of our childhood too. It's almost like a chicken and egg situations, like, who came first, the kid who was the fastest on the playground or the fastest person in the world, So who's emulating who in this situation? Did we just take kids' games and just made them into world athletic games that people can do, or is it the vice versa? But I love it, man. I love the fact that I think that's one thing that kept me going for so long, is the fact of not only was I able to compete against people, but I was able to push myself. I was able to see how far I can go, how strong I could be, how fast I can be, and just kind of dive into like the science of everything and learning, flight trajectory steps, how much ground you're covering, in 12 yards or 12 meters per second. All those things like really kind of piqued my interest at a point where I should have been done with the sport. I did everything I could do. I've won 3 Diamond League trophies in a row, still got my Olympic golds, my world championships. And I've probably been like, oh, I'm good with this. But for whatever reason, it was just like, I took pride in just forging my body into the best shape it could be. And that was always my challenge. I wanted to lead the sport and just be tapped of all my talent that I could give.
And there's a very real feedback loop in track that's great, because it's like, I can just see I'm faster. I'm running a faster time. I did this challenge with my brother, and I went out and ran a 14.36 in the 100 meter the first time. And before I was like, there's no way I run below 13s. I ran a 14.36 the first time. I was like, I don't think I ran that slow in 6th grade. And a month of just doing basic training by myself with my brother, we came back and we ran in the 12. So it was 2 seconds faster. We're just 2 different humans. And so it kind of set this whole thing in motion, like, hey, should we just keep doing this? Because I hadn't been running or sprinting. Yes, the average person in their 30s, when's the last time you sprinted? High school, maybe? Middle school, right? Yeah. It's not something, most of us are afraid of it. It's the tip of the spear. So we're afraid of getting into that, that dynamic of an activity, because it just pushes yourself so hard. But the feedback loop in track is phenomenal and also kind of tough at the same time, because if you're not getting faster, it's like, well, shit, like I can just see it. Again, you're isolated.
Yeah, it is. And I think that people always kind of omit the fact of, yes, we physically train almost nonstop, but no one is actually training them mentally. And that's where a lot of these athletes fall off. They fall off the fact of, yes, I can be faster in practice. You're in a controlled environment, so you're feeling great. You're going out there, and if you didn't get it right the first time, guess what? I got 2 or 3 more reps of that. I can do it again till I get it right. But then when you get into a situation where it's controlled chaos at the highest level of like the Olympic finals, that's something that you didn't train for emotionally or mentally. And now that moment's come to where little version of you at 8 years old wishing to be an Olympic gold medalist, now that moment's in front of you. That's the big moment that the audience does not understand how much pressure that is. And it's such a unique pressure. You see it on their faces when they're standing at the start line and they realize, they come to grips with the fact of, my God, I have arrived at the thing that my childhood all was based on, and I'm right here. And if I don't get it right, I'm going to lose that moment for the rest of my life.
And it's less than 10 seconds. So I want to go to one of my favorite moments in sports. I want to go to that start line specifically. So now we're to 2017. Okay, so we're going to go to the 2017, and we're going to just watch this clip together. We're going to go to the 2017 World Championships here. So let's pull this up. I'm sure you remember this well. Okay, so we're at the intros here.
The fastest man in the world this year from the USA, the fastest qualifier from the semi-finals. And listen to the roar. The fireworks are lit. The flashbulbs are going mad. The familiar smile of the fastest man the world has ever seen.
So we have Bolt walking out. Sounds like it was decently loud for him. I'd assume that was pretty par for the course.
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, this is his last 100 meters he's ever going to run in front of a crowd. This is his final 100 meters. So it was pandemonium once he did the roll call.
So then, okay, so we got Bolt here, and then we're going to get to you. So that's the Bolt response from the crowd.
Yeah.
In lane number 8, a silver medalist in Rio last year, a world champion over the 100 and 200 meters in 2005.
100,000 people probably in that stadium. I'm not sure how many total.
Yeah.
Boos are raining down. So that, I mean, I didn't know that happened. Rewatching this, it's like, that seems very unusual for a track meet. What's going through your mind there? These boos raining down, 100,000 people. You're at that moment you just talked about. You've made it back to this big stage again. What's going through your mind?
In that moment, I was prepared for the boos because the boos kind of escalated from prelims, semis. They got louder. So the first round was kind of like a boo, like, oh, what's going on here? The second round, the semis, it was definite. It was like, oh yeah, I'm getting booed here, And then the finals, it was equal to Usain's cheers. I was booed that much. I always thought to myself that if I ever got booed in front of an audience like that, I would be mortified. Because like you said before, the spotlight's on you and you feel like an individual. You feel like you're out there by yourself. So I feel like I would have just shriveled up and shrunk and just not been focused. In actuality, it was the opposite. The first thing that went through my mind is, I can show you better than I can tell you. And I remember just dialing in even more and just going out there and running my race and not caring and actually using those boos as energy just to like kind of quiet the naysayers and prove them wrong. So that actually gave me more fire to go out there and win this race. Instead of them, they should have just ignored me. If they ignored me.
Had that been happening at other races, or was this like the first time it was really present for you? Like, these people are booing me.
This was like the first time it ever really happened. Like, because
at the World Championships?
At the World Championships. But it was because it was a mixture. Because once again, it was Usain's last World Championships. It was his last 100 meters the world was ever going to see. And it was his adopted country, the UK. They love him there. So they wanted to see a fairy tale ending. They wanted to see him ride off into the sunset. They wanted to see him have the victory there on their home turf. And I was the guy who could stop that. So I felt like it was a lot of mental games that were being played, mental warfare, against me to make sure that I wasn't on my game. Because 2012, I was in that same stadium. 2012 at the Olympics was that same stadium where I won bronze behind Johan Blake and Usain Bolt. And on that podium, everyone was cheering for me. So you can probably estimate and guesstimate that a large percentage of that crowd from the Olympics are in that same stadium in 2017. It's just now the stakes are higher and it's different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So let's watch then the race here. So we're gonna cut to the race. I'm sure you haven't seen this before. Just a few times.
Well, it's a clean start. It's a good start by Coleman. The American's flying in lane number 5. It's the American leading the Jamaican at the moment. It's going to be Coleman, but on the outside in lane number 8, unofficially 9.94 seconds. Well, was it Gatlin in lane number 8? Was it Coleman in lane number 5? The crowd drops. Justin Gatlin.
Did you know to shush?
No.
Did you know you were going to do that?
No, I did not know I was going to do that. It was one of those things that just happened.
Dude, it is one of my favorite moments in sports. I mean, because you hear the boos. And again, I didn't piece that together until now. It was like, oh, the boos came on Bolt's last race.
Mm-hmm.
That is one of my favorite moments ever in sports. That had to be so fucking cool to be able to, the whole crowd.
It was so cool because, you know, when you actually see other athletes kind of do this gesture and after they do a performance or make a soccer goal or a dunk or a three-pointer, you're like, okay, who are they doing this to? That's the first thing you ask, right? Like, who are they doing this to? But then in my situation, you realize it's the audience because the audience is already booing me at such a high level that they know that shush was for them. It was undeniably for them. And it was not even rehearsed. It was one of those situations.
It was just a reaction.
It was just a reaction. That's all. It literally was a reaction. And I must say that it's been times, and I think any athlete, you know, when you're sitting in your hotel room, you're thinking like, if I win, I'm going to do this, or I'm going to do that, or, you know, some kind of gesture. But that right there was just like all instinctual after that race. I knew that I won because I was able to look over and peripherally kind of watch and see where I'm at to the finish line compared to like Christian Coleman and Usain Bolt. And as soon as I leaned, I knew I had it. That's why I was like, yeah, I got this for sure. But I didn't want to be embarrassed. I knew I was behind enemy lines and I wanted to make sure because it took so long for it to come up on the board. I was like, man, they're going to screw me or either I didn't win. And then my name came up and I was just like, shh. The whole crowd gasped at once. That was the funniest part ever. They were like, oh.
They couldn't believe it because, I mean, you're stealing this moment from him. This is the prodigy's swan song. Was it known that this was his final race?
Yeah, it was news. It was news, for sure.
Here comes this 35-year-old that we thought we were done with, ruining this moment. I mean, that just had to be such a cool feeling to be like, shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
But I wonder, you know, if there was part of you that didn't view it that way, because it would feel great to shush the crowd, but then maybe there's part of you that's like, wait, why am I getting booed? I just fought my ass off. I was a Olympic champion, the fastest man in the world at 22. I got banned. Here I am 13 years later, the oldest world champion ever, doing the unprecedented. I'm back on this stage and they're booing me. I'm sure that it had been a weird experience. There's part of you that's like, yeah, fuck you, I did it. And part of you that's like, wait, why are these people booing me?
Yeah. Yeah. It was very confusing for me because I always love knowing that each athlete has their story, their mountain that they're climbing. And I feel like everything I did up to that point and being the oldest in the field by far, almost half a decade or more, it was surprising that people were so locked in on one aspect of it, you know? Even when you watch that race, usually your top competitors are next to each other in a race. They're either going to be in the middle of the track, 4 or 5 or 6. Those are the lanes they're going to be in. And they're going to be running next to each other stride for stride. I'm in lane 8. Usain's in like lane 3. You know what I mean? So we're so far apart, and that was done on purpose as well, because if I can't feel him or see him as he's running, then I'm never a threat to him. He can run his race more relaxed. It was just a fact of you had the young gun, Christian Coleman, next to him that he was more concerned about because Christian Coleman had an amazing start. Usain Bolt doesn't have the best start. And now Usain has to play catch up. Now he's running against this guy and not worry about the rest of the field. And I was over there doing my thing and able to get the win. It was a lot of mental warfare played in that race. So much that I wish that I was able to play mental warfare earlier in my career, it would give me a different outcome in a lot of different races too.
How so? What do you mean by the mental warfare? Like, what? Because I mean, like, I think from the outside, it's like, yeah, just run your race, just run as fast as you can. Like, what's the
It's,
mental warfare in 100 meter?
so leading up to that race, I had a injury maybe like a month or so prior, where it was like a residual from like an ankle sprain. So my hip was out of whack because I was using one side more than the other now because I was trying to baby that ankle that I had injury. And now that I don't have that rocket start that I usually would have, I had to work on being more top end speed dominant. So I would go back and look at tapes of myself from college where I was more top end speed. So I started working on that at practice within like maybe 3 to 4 weeks before we went to World Championships, and solely worked on top end speed. But then when we got there, I know how smart Usain is, and his coach's IQ level is at a high level when it comes to track and field. If I would have went out there on the first round or the second round and showed that I had a lot of more unusual top end speed, they would have had a way to combat that in the finals. They would have been aware of it. So I had to kind of navigate myself through the rounds and even lose on purpose the second round, the semis, so I wouldn't show top end speed. And when I went into the finals, I wasn't a factor to a lot of people.
Right. That's the minutia of sprinting. And I spoke with Dr. Lance Brooks a little bit about this, and I've learned a lot. From what it sounds like, you can kind of build your approach to be more acceleration heavy and do better in the first part of the race, or maybe have a little bit better top speed. So like a guy like Christian Coleman has crazy acceleration, and he can maybe tune some pieces to where he has less acceleration and more top end speed. Is that am I saying that
100%.
correctly? Because I'm thinking of it kind of like a pendulum, where it's like, okay, what do I want? And there's a balancing act, obviously. You still want to accelerate fast, but there's an approach to where you can maybe get more top end speed, a little bit less acceleration. Is that right?
Yeah, to be honest, that's why I love breaking down Christian Coleman, because he's such a unique athlete himself. When you watch him run, he's considered one of the best starters to ever be, right? And then he gets up to a point and then he ramps. He ramps up and then kind of falls off a cliff because he goes up to his top end speed and then he can't maintain it. But not because usually you want balance. Like you said, you want to be able to have some good top end speed, but you also want to be able to have good acceleration. His issue is his technique and his form. In football, you call him a downhill runner, which is basically like almost everything behind them. And they're kind of like that cycling of their legs are behind them. It's almost like you're running downhill. Like you can't get your feet in front of you, so you're just trying to stabilize yourself. If you watch a lot of his races early on, he was a downhill runner. He just was able to manipulate that in the beginning of his races, get out in front of the crowd, but he wasn't able to change his form when it came to the top end speed. So he was stuck in a certain cadence and he couldn't get out of that. So when people who came along who had top end speed and they can get to him because they was in striking distance, they would run past him. So he had to fix that flaw over time to be able to have better technique. And then that would balance out his acceleration and his top end speed.
And is there a mental game too to sprinting where it's like, because again, I think the outside is like, yeah, just run as fast as you can. Whoever's the fastest is going to win. Is there kind of a mental game that's going on even within that 10 seconds that can make or break how a guy finishes a race?
Oh, 100%. It's almost like playing goalie in soccer. Like you have to pick if you're going to go left or right when that ball is getting kicked, right? You can't just anticipate when the ball gets kicked, oh, left, right. You have to commit one way or another. And the same thing for sprinters, because we only get 9 seconds, you have to commit to what your race pattern is. It's just that you hope that you trained your race pattern to a level to where it combats, Usain Bolt's, Asafa Powell's, Tyson Gay's race pattern too. You want to be able to say, I can get out with them, but I can also hold them off with top end speed.
But that's where I'm confused, because it's like you're in your own lane, so it's not dynamic in that they're not interacting directly with you in the normal sense where it's like, this guy's guarding me a certain way, I have to play slightly different. It's like they're in their own lanes. So that's where I'm just curious, what is that interaction to where it is maybe a mental game, because it's not a traditional sport in the sense of, well, I have to adjust because he's doing this to me.
Okay, I see. So every athlete has a strike zone, right? They have a couple of strike zones down the track. So if you're running and leaving the blocks, you want to have a drive phase to about 25 meters to 30 meters. That's your drive phase, right? And then as you come out your drive phase, that's your transition. So some athletes have a stronger transition to where once they leave that drive phase, it's like a rubber band effect. It's like a slingshot. They go faster. And then some people have a very slow start and they have but a strong buildup in their transition. And then once they get the top end speed, it's like they just open the floodgates and then like they're just wheeling and dealing. Like they're just running away from the crowd. So I had a race in Lausanne one year in 2015 where I was racing against Asafa Powell, who had a great start, amazing starter. He doesn't have a lot of top end speed, but he maintains his top end speed very well once he gets up and goes. And on the other side of me in that race was Tyson Gay. Tyson Gay doesn't have a good start, but once he gets comfortable in his run after the transition, he gets up and goes and he has amazing top end speed. So both of them were two different guys. So I had to be able to come into this race thinking like, how am I going to combat a guy who's a good starter? And how am I going to combat a guy who's a good finisher? So I had to find the middle. So the middle for me was if I have a lower angle than Asafa out of the blocks, that means that I can be able to build a better velocity through my drive phase and transition to where I can stay in front of him, right? And once I did that, I was able to be in front of him from the 40 meter to the 50 meter. And then that's when Tyson usually kicks in his afterburners. So now once I get to that 40, 50 meter mark, that's when I start to look more and pay more attention to where Tyson is. And if he's coming on fast, how I can be able to hold him off in those next 50 to 40 meters going into the finish line.
Because are you thinking as it's happening, is there like a mental part of it to where it's like, you mentioned like Bolt being close to Coleman. Is he maybe in that period of time like fixating on the wrong thing to where this guy's here and I'm maybe getting thrown off of my normal race pattern because I'm reacting to where he's at and where I thought he was going to be at or something like that, and it can throw you off? Is it because I'm really curious about that mental game, because when I raced my brother, I felt like I didn't run my own race. He also beat me, so maybe I'm just using that as an excuse. But you know, at the same time, it felt like I looked back, I was like, man, I don't even know if I really ran my own race. I was so fixated on where he was at the whole time. So I just am curious how much that can impact someone's performance in a race, you know?
So you like perfect example of that race when you watch Usain and Christian Coleman run against each other. Christian gets out, but what Bolt wants to do is he wants to stop the bleeding. He wants to get out, but he wants to make sure that he's close enough to Christian by the time he gets to his comfortable zone of top end speed, which Bolt shines at. He's able to be in striking distance of Christian, so he doesn't run out of real estate. So now, yeah, you're running the cadence of Christian's race compared to him just going out there and executing, running his race that he's done time and time again. You get caught up in someone else's races because they do something that's extraordinary, not used to that.
Yeah, there's maybe more of an interplay than people think. And these are obviously guys that you're only competing against on the world stage a few times, so it's not like you're training against it. And you can't really maybe prepare for that interplay, but there's maybe more of a hidden interplay there in a short race. We know it exists in the mile and, you know, distance races where they're always repositioning and getting in front of them out behind different guys. But there's maybe more of an interplay there than people think with even something as short as a 100 meter.
100%. So like in 2015 was probably arguably my best year I've ever had. The only thing that separated me from Usain was the fact of his ground contact. He had better ground contact time than I did. I stayed on the ground longer than he did through that sprint than, you know, necessary. So that's the only thing that separated us. And in every other category, I was beating him from start to transition to drive phase to acceleration. I was beating him. It was the fact of he had better ground contact. So he was getting off the ground and getting to the next step quicker than I was. So it's almost like a boxer who's throwing a straight compared to somebody who's throwing a jab. I was throwing straights and I was being slower, but I was still being powerful, but he was throwing jabs when it was necessary.
That's that balance. That's where it's another weird balance, right? Because there's the force, and you mentioned punching. So if you maybe get a little bit more behind it, you get more force, or you can turn up the turnover and accelerate really fast, but you're not going to have as much force. So it's like, you know, there's this balancing act of how do I find the perfect force? And that's something you train and work for. I'd imagine that's different for each sprinter.
It is. Yeah, because each sprinter is built different too. So
right.
They're going to come with certain attributes naturally already. And then there's things they have to work on and build towards. So that's the same thing like what Usain. When Usain first started running, he's already 6'5". He started running like he was 6'5". That means that you have too much air time. You have too much length in your body, and you're gonna slowly get to the next step where everyone else who's like 6'1" or 5'11", they're getting to the next step quicker. So he had to learn how to run like he was 6 foot instead of 6'5". And that's why it created the bolt that we see today.
Yeah, that's so crazy. One of the things I wanted to ask you, as far as these young sprinters, they're running crazy times. They're running, so many of them are running so fast. Do you think that is just better training, more training? Do you think it's gear related? I'm sure you have an idea how much spikes have changed. Do you think it's something else? What is causing all these kids to run these crazy times? They just keep getting faster in high school.
We call it trackflation. So, but I believe it's just the evolution of things around us in our sport. So you're having new tools, like training tools and techniques that are being implemented into helping athletes become faster and stronger. They don't have to work as hard as before. They have a machine called like the 1080. It's a pulley system, but also it has a capability of being almost like a bullet belt where it pulls you. You can pull it like a sled, but it can pull you. So now you can work on your top end speed as well. So that's helped out a lot of athletes. And then now you don't have to go out and do 8 reps. You can do 4 reps of that and still get the same benefit and not be as taxed. But there's also been, obviously, with new shoes, the bubble shoes they have for the spikes, to where the bubble is supposed to help you stay on the ball of your feet towards the end of the race, where you see photos of athletes pretty much flat-footed as they're running. It helps break that. So instead of having so much ground contact, it's helping you get off the ground and keep that momentum going and hopefully go out and PR, break a world record. But I also believe it's the workouts. So what happens is the workouts that are professional workouts, they're getting trickled down to the college athletes. And those college coaches are teaching those professional workouts to those college athletes. And then those college workouts are getting trickled down to those high school athletes and those high school coaches. And they're teaching those kind of like nuances. So now across the board, you're seeing a shift. You're seeing faster high school kids, you're seeing faster college kids, and now you're seeing faster professional kids.
Do you feel like they're plateauing though? Because one of the things I just am curious about, because I feel like we are seeing some 9.7s, Thompson, and I'm sure world championships, if weather's good, we'll probably see some 9.7s there maybe. But do you feel like they're maybe plateauing in a way? Because, I don't know what you ran in high school. What did you run your senior year of high school?
10.3.
Okay. So big jump for Gatlin between senior year of high school and what you ran professionally, 0.6 of a second there. Why are we not seeing that jump for some of these high school kids? Why are they running? I think there was a high school kid that maybe ran low 9.9s. This year, like a 9.94, 9.92, something like that. Why are we not seeing that jump from an 18-year-old to a 23, 24-year-old professional, to where they're not seeing, the same improvement that you maybe saw, or even half of it? You would think that they'd at least get a few tenths of a second faster. Maybe they will, but I feel like there's been some of these young sprinters that just aren't taking that next step, and they're kind of plateauing in a way. And it makes me wonder if the training is maybe having them peak earlier and they're not able to improve. They're maybe better to maybe put it differently, they're better at 18, but they have a lower peak overall.
So it's a twofold. So to answer that part of the question, if I give you those workouts that you're supposed to be doing in college, in high school, and then you peak in high school, and then you go to college and start doing those same workouts, you're plateau. You're doing the same stuff for at least the next 4 to 6 years. Of course, you're never going to see a benefit because you're doing the same thing over and over again. It's like someone who goes out and runs a mile every day trying to figure out why they're not losing weight or getting faster, because you're never challenging your body. Your body's so smart, it realizes, I can do this in my sleep now. Give me challenge. So that's why you see stagnant athletes in those situations. But also, like I said before, the science is brought in to where now you don't have to work as hard anymore. You can work smarter and achieve a goal, but then will that goal be consistent? That's why my era can go out there and run 9.7, 9.7, 9.7, 9.7, because we had to forge ourselves to go out there and run all those 8 reps instead of running 3 or 4 reps. So now these athletes are going out there running 1.97 and they can't replicate it the next race or the race after that because their body's not used to doing it consistently over and over again.
Yeah. I just wonder, that you get into like the specialization side of things, and you played football. You just wonder if there's so much attention to an 18-year-old. They're not able to peak in the same way because they're just training so much, between 18 and, let's just say 17 and 20, to where they're just maybe not developing the same way, and they're not able to peak maybe a few years later down the road where you were peaking. You peaked in your 30s in certain ways, right? Just unheard of.
Had 2 sneaky careers, yeah.
Yeah, that's really, it's so unique, but I don't know. It'll be interesting to look back on this 10 years from now and see where these kids have run. If maybe some of them do break into the 9.6s, maybe one of them gets into the 9.5s, but you just have to wonder if that specialization is limiting the true optimal sprint peak performance of maybe just specializing 2-3 years later, like you did. Do you understand what I'm getting at?
I know exactly what you're getting at. Here's my theory, and we can always double back on this and have a talk about it, but I think that it's going to create micro careers. So you're going to have these high school kids, because it's the era of NIL and the excitement of the youth sports and seeing these athletes who are going to be the next great ones. We're dumping so much money and attention into these 18-year-olds and giving them everything that's necessary for them to go out there and run sub 10 at 18 years old. And then by the time they do go through college or even turn pro in the next couple of years after that, they never have that real growth or transition to go from running 9.99 to 9.82 or 9.7, because their body is pretty much taxed or either it's plateaued, So I think micro careers are going to come into effect where we're going to be excited for these high school kids doing amazing things, and then we're not going to see them 5 years down the road. They're not going to be that same athlete anymore.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely possible, and you're just a guy that's so strange because you were having 2 careers in a way, as you mentioned. Why do you think you were running faster in your 30s than Bolt? Like, why is Gatlin running these times that he is in his 30s when maybe a guy like Bolt falls off later in his career more, isn't able to get back to those same peaks?
Well, this is how we start the conversation. I think that's the silver lining for me. Those 4 years actually helped my legs to rest. It actually rekindled a fire in me to go out there and fight for something different. Like we said before, I won the Olympic gold, the double gold in the world championships, and I broke the world record before I had to sit down for 4 years. But when I came back into this game, it gave me something to fight for. It gave me something to prove. I think the arc of when you watch Usain, he started off as a child prodigy, and then he built himself a healthy career. And then when he got to 30, which is the normal age of a professional sprinter to kind of retire, he was like, I'm done. I'm out of here. He did everything he could do in the sport. So I think that he didn't have a fight or a point to prove it anymore. And he said that when he sat down with me and had a conversation, he said, you coming back in the sport, especially through 2015, like I gave him a reason to go forward and fight for more. And I was a challenge for him. So I think that's where we see athletes that don't have that challenge anymore, don't have that fire anymore, and they kind of just fade away.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure that was, a big part of it. So it's maybe that same drive. And, I think one of the things that's so weird too in track is the podium, and just like 100th of a second can separate you from winning gold. In Athens, it was 100th of a second that separated you from second place, and 200ths of a second that separated being on the podium at all and winning gold. That's wild.
Yeah, it's like this.
I mean, faster than that, right? Like it's even faster than that. And so it's like Wheaties boxes, everything that came with that 2/100ths of a second, that pressure. I mean, you had to I just can't imagine like being able to sit in bed at night too and think like, I am the fastest person on the planet. And when somebody says, you're the one guy that when somebody says, there's always someone faster than you, just look at him, he's like, no.
So I would lay in bed and think just like that. I'd be like, man, I'm the fastest guy in the world. Or I'll walk into any rooms or establishments and I'd be like, I'm the fastest guy in here. But then what would humble me and keep me from getting too high in the clouds is there's a guy somewhere who is not knowing that he has such a truly natural talent that he is probably faster than me. Thinking that someone's faster than me out there always gave me drive, but also kept me hungry and humble. So I always use that as a way of keeping me kind of even keel.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, 7 billion people, there's going to be somebody out there who's got some decent genetics and are going to, get behind it. But
I'm just glad that they are not in the sport. At the point in time I was in the sport, maybe they were somewhere else doing accounting or something like that.
Yeah. Speaking of, it's the sport right now. So it's looking forward to the World Championships coming up here. We have Noah Lyles in Thompson. It kind of seems like there's maybe a rivalry of sorts that is building. We have just these two sprinters that are going to be facing off. I guess what are your thoughts going into World Championships, and maybe what are your predictions looking at the World Championships going forward?
So if everything goes as it did last year, Noah could win again. And I say that because Noah possesses that top end speed. Usain is a great starter, strong transition, and he maintenance his top end speed fairly well. He ramps up to 9.7 pace, right? But Noah runs to 9.7 pace. So he's still going as he goes to the finish line at 9.7 pace. So he has a better opportunity, better shot to kind of still duck at the line and get the win by the slimmest of margins. Now, it's all about tactic. That's all I keep telling people. Instead of just saying the gun goes off and you just run, it's about tactic. I hope that Usain has gone back to practice before the time of the World Championships and worked on his top end speed. Because if he's able to create enough distance between him and Noah in the beginning of the race and the middle of the race, then Noah's going to run out of real estate and won't be able to catch him. Usain has the capabilities of doing it. He has the capabilities of running. His end of his race is a little rickety when it comes to his technique. And I think he's kind of like trying to squeeze water from a rock sometimes when he's running, but he's new in the game. So it takes time to kind of forge and polish your technique along the way. But Noah needs to make sure that he has his start. If he doesn't have a start, he has a lot of work to do. And he probably will falter in that way.
Yeah, he's a gamer, it seems like.
Oh, 100%. He's a gamer. He's the kind of guy who talks the talk, but he also walks the walk. And you have to respect that in the game, in sports, period. If someone comes out talking trash, but still able to get the bucket, still able to get the touchdown, still able to come across the finish line first, you say, hey, they did it. They told you they were going to do it. They told you how they were going to do it, and they got the job done. It's like Muhammad Ali. Like, he's legendary for that. We liked him more with his trash talking than we did actually watching his fights most of the time.
Right. I mean, it seems like the NBA has almost evolved into more of a, like, what are they doing versus how are they playing? Maybe to the detriment of that sport, but with sprinting, we're just drawn to that flashiness. It's like it is everything that event represents in a way. It's like who is the flashiest both on the track sprinting, but also that persona to where I'm sure it helps like endorsements, everything else, if you carry a personality like that versus just like kind of walking out and just walking back out.
Yes.
But I mean, you and Bolt, maybe the two most properly named individuals in sports history.
Yeah.
Gatlin and Bolt.
You know what?
Parents know? Did your parents have any idea? Like,
No.
Hey.
My parents were not athletes, so I was the first athlete of the family.
Did you just start running then? I mean, at what point did you get in sprinting?
That was like my last sport that I tried out for, man. I mean, I did baseball, did football, I did swimming at one point. I played the piano, I did trumpet, saxophone. And then I was like, I'm pretty fast, so maybe I'll try to join the track team. I went out and made the track team in middle school, and I was so proud of myself. And I came home and my parents laughed at me. They was like, what? You made the team? Because I was so lazy around the house. So they never thought of me like moving with a sense of urgency for anything. So when they came to see me run for the first time, they just was like so impressed. And after that, they went to any championship I had anywhere in the world. They were there. They were there to watch.
Yeah. It had to be, I don't know what like the biggest purse you ever got was for a race, but like getting paid for 10 seconds of your time. Like, at some points it's like a wonderful career. You're walking home with a major bag after just 10 seconds. Other points, you maybe not. What was like the most you ever made off of just a 10-second period? Less than 10-second period, I guess.
$100,000 in 10 seconds. So
really?
Yeah. But I must say that you have to do a breakdown on the track game compared to the hustle game. And why I say that is because if you think about it, the athletes that are truly successful in our sport is because of the product that they deal. And what I mean by product is like your times, your effort. That's what Noah is right now. He's dealing such a good product that it's tried and true. It's hard to bet against it. It's a good product. You know what I mean? But now if he waters down his product and he kind of like starts slacking and gets more enthralled in kind of being a Hollywood world, now someone else could come along and have a better product. They're going to beat him. Now people are going to be more excited about that and they're going to be clamoring for that. Like that's how our track game is. And especially when it comes to sponsorships. Sponsors are going to bring you on because they think that you can do well, but they're going to pay you bigger bucks because you are doing better, And
how did your sponsorship, I guess relationship go? I mean, does Nike just call you one day and say, hey, we think we're going to move on to, this new 19-year-old. How does that work?
Well, I mean, yeah, usually the contracts are in the cycle of the Olympic year. So everyone has a contract within that same time frame. So when you get young guys who are coming out of college or young girls who are coming out of college, we'll be like, all right, if you can make the Olympic team or make it to the, Olympic trials, depending how well you do, we have this amount of money for you. So then that person signs, they have a contract that leads for the next 3 years, it has bonuses, reductions, clauses in there. And then by the time the next Olympic cycle comes around, then you obviously re-sign, or they have the first right of refusal sometimes, and keep that cycle just going. They rob Peter to pay Paul sometimes. It's like you see one guy who's phasing out and you take, the reduction money that you take from that older athlete and you start getting it to the new athlete. So they keep that cycle going away.
So you maybe just don't like renew the contract with older athlete and, they just say, hey, we're actually going to go a different direction. Is that
sometimes
how it works?
Sometimes it can be like that. But I think that if you still have value, they're going to keep you around. But that's when the negotiation comes in of like, how much are they going to pay you? I remember they were questioning if I was going to be able to run in 2017. And my agent was like, he going to be ready. You know what I mean? Because obviously I was an older athlete. And then once I went out there and did what I did, they were like, okay, yeah, we should have bet on him big time, Because as an older athlete, I learned this tactic is as your base pay starts to decline, for whatever reason, you negotiate your bonuses. Always bet on yourself. If you truly believe that you can get the job done, bet the bonuses on yourself. Don't argue on the base pay, because if your bonuses hit, it's going to bring you back to your base pay, and it's going to be higher, and it's going to be then some, even more. I watch athletes do this over and over again. It's like a little trick, because most of the time, shoe companies aren't going to say no to a bonus because they don't think you can hit it. But it's going to excite them that they can put money into it and keep you and retain you. But once you hit that bonus, they're going to be like, oh man, he did it, or she did it. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. The relationship, I guess, with sponsors is wild. So I'd assume you didn't have Nike your second career to maybe call it that. The second go around, you maybe didn't have Nike in bed at the start.
Not in the beginning when I started my second career. No, I was actually unsigned. When I won the indoor world championship 60 meters, I was an unsigned athlete. I was the only athlete who's ever been unsigned and win a major championship.
Wow.
And then my agent thought outside the box. We went to a Chinese company who actually created athletic gear, but most of their I guess the clients or representation they had, they were like either pop singers or movie stars. So they was like, let's bring in Justin Gatlin. So they brought me in. I wore the X-Tep, symbol. Usually you'll see it on YouTube. I have like an X on the side, and I I got to create my own contract, which was the craziest thing in the world because they didn't understand track and field contracts or sport contracts at all. So my agent sat down, and I mean, almost every race I ran, I got a bonus. So I got to a point where they fell behind paying me because I was making so much money. And then, and then when that contract was up, that's when Nike started coming knocking on the door because they hate to see that a former guy they had is out there kicking everybody's ass that they have signed already.
Yeah. Okay. So basically you got signed by a company that wasn't even like a track company. I'm sure Nike, that had to have been a pretty funny moment. Like, what is that guy running in?
Yeah, that's how it started off. Everybody's like, what is that? And then I started winning, and they was like, oh, well, whatever it is, they supporting them.
Yeah, they start looking into the science of everything. They're like, oh, well, he actually might just be that fast. Like, it's not the shoes.
Exactly. So a funny story is, by the time I got to the Olympic trials in 2016, I got a call from a Nike rep, and they was like, we want to do a carve out deal with you. Since your company doesn't have spikes, we want to be able to pay you to wear our spikes because we can't bear to see you come to Oregon, which is our home territory, and win the Olympic trials in a different shoe. So they was like, we're going to do a carve out for you for that. And that's how that relationship kind of started over again.
So you did a carve out. So then you didn't wear them in the Olympics then. So you were back in the X's for the Olympics?
I was back in the X's for the Olympics, which were Frankenstein of shoes because I had a guy, the company kind of brought a guy on who used to be a shoemaker for like Adidas and a couple other companies. And he literally was making spikes in his garage, bro. Like it was the spike.
But this wasn't
Adidas.
Bill Bowerman. This wasn't the new Bill Bowerman. This is the dad that was doing a little side hustle, huh?
Exactly. So these spikes were definitely, I could say they were 101, but they were made. And I mean, literally like between the semis of the 100-meter finals at the Olympics and the finals, I was sitting there with my spike and I was super gluing the spike plate back to the upper to make sure it doesn't fall off while I'm running. And my coach walks over and he says, man, your spikes are going to blow up at the 30-meter mark. But it's a chance I took.
Wear them, though?
I did. Yeah.
You still wear? Okay. So you wore super glued spikes. That is unbelievable.
Yeah.
That's funny. Cool, man. It was great, to kind of hear a little bit more about your story again. I just am blown away by your story. I think it's so inspirational too for a lot of people because that idea of kind of the two careers, the fact that you peaked again in your 30s and you went on to have this unbelievable comeback career. And obviously you're still doing great stuff today, but from an athletic sense, it just doesn't follow at all what a typical sprinter might do. So I think it's so cool and inspirational to a lot of people because, I mean, you got a lot more in the tank than you think in your 30s. And I think there's maybe just a perception that those days are past, but in reality, it's just more of you're just more stagnant. You're just not doing those things. And you still could get back to that, but you're just maybe not doing the activities that you did in your earlier stages of life.
I loved my 30s as a sprinter because it was the perfect time for me to be a professional athlete. I wasn't 20-something years old worrying about going into the club or partying or drinking. I was more disciplined and staying home and resting my body and really diving and being obsessed with the process of becoming an elite sprinter in my 30s and maintaining that. And I feel like I had a lot more wisdom in my 30s. I wasn't just going off of raw talent like I was in my 20s and just going out there just running and gunning. My 30s showed me that being what it really meant to be an athlete, sleeping, training, but also nutrition. But I was also just diving into the fact of like, how am I going to practice? Like, am I just going out here and just running until he tells me to stop? Or am I really going to work on different aspects of my race through practice? So then when I get into competition, I won't fight. I won't fail. I won't falter. And that's what I loved about my 30s. I was way wiser.
Yeah.
If I could do it all again and start over, I definitely start over in my 30s. Any athlete that's out there right now, don't take your 30s for granted. Don't think you're old. You're actually in the prime in your 30s.
Because you're wiser. I mean, you're just, the way that you can approach it is different than you would have when you're younger. You just don't think the same way, and because of that, it's a new skill of sorts, a new sword that you can take, and just become a different athlete than you maybe would have expected. I mean, it was shocking just for me, and it's all relative. Like it was shocking for me to get back to as fast as I ran when I was 18 years old, when I was 165 pounds, doing that in 100 days, which me and my brother both did. So yeah, it's a wonderful experience to feel it, but also you can't take for granted the fact that you're just less of a dipshit when you're in your 30s.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's true.
well, cool, man. Well, hey, appreciate this. We'll have to do this again, but thanks for your time.
Of course, man. Appreciate it, man. Thank you so much.